Hello everyone, and welcome to Bpm'online's Best Practice webinar. Thank you for joining us. Today we'll be discussing delivering customer experience excellence to win the battle for the 21st century customer. Really happy that you could join us today. We are looking to make this interactive as interactive as possible. We'll have a couple polls throughout the presentation, and we also ask that you enter your questions in the chat function on the side. So let's get started. So extremely happy to introduce today a good friend of ours, Paul Greenberg. Paul is certainly a luminary in our industry, managing principal of 57th Group, also the author of the best-selling CRM at the Speed of Light, which is in multiple versions at this point, I think maybe the fourth, and has been referred to in the past as the godfather of CRM. Paul, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Looking forward to the presentation.
Thanks, Mike. Always happy to work with you guys. So what I want to do today in the next, roughly 45 minutes or so is focus in on customer experience explicitly, which, to be clear, and this will be clarified as we go through it, is different in customer satisfaction, it's different in customer engagement, but it's as critically important as either and both of them. Look, let me start this by disabusing you of a notion. If you think that over the last decade plus we've had a business revolution, you're actually wrong. We had something far more significant. It's been a digital communications revolution that's impacted every institution on this planet, almost every single human being on this planet when it comes to how we communicate, with whom we communicate, what we use to communicate, our expectations of the communication, and most importantly, who and how we trust, and we'll get into that in a second. But the other thing it's done, which impacts us dramatically, is how we create, distribute, and consume information has been transformed irrevocably and without any chance of ever being back what it was. Now, that said, we're not going to throw baby and bathwater out in this presentation. We're going to go through companies that have done this extremely well, have understood customer experience for what it really is, and also understood what that means when it comes to actually interacting and intersecting with a customer over time. Right now, first and foremost, we have to understand something. If you remember what I said earlier, one of the most important transformations and pieces of all of this is that who and how we trust has changed also dramatically. If you go back to 2000, literally, there was for the first edition of what's called the Edelman Trust Barometer came out. And the Edelman Trust Barometer has always been a trusted source on who is your most trusted source. It took a look at all the different possible categories and groups that you might trust, and then based on the survey results would indicate who was number one in your eyes. Now, if you go back to, say, 2002, 2003, right in that range, you find that the most trusted source in the world, and this is incredibly ironic, is financial advisors, right? And you see where that actually got us, right? So, but in 2004, for the very first time, this new category started rising. It was called a person like me. Now, it didn't mean someone you knew. It didn't mean a blood relative. What it meant was someone who you, and I'm using this word scientifically, someone who you felt was like you, meaning they had similar habits, similar ideas, they had similar interests, they had similar, let's say, they rooted for the same teams, they had the same political outlook, they liked the same hobbies you did, they were fashion conscious the way you were, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you felt as if you could trust them because they had those similar characteristics. Look, you might think, oh yeah, well, nobody's really like that, but the reality is you're like that, right? I don't have to ask you, and frankly, I actually can't really ask you, but you all use review sites, I'm presuming. And when you go to this review site, what you'll do is you'll do something like, well, okay, I'm looking for the best steak in the city of Atlanta. Okay, so here's restaurants 1 through 5 star rated, and here's this 3 that says the steak is outstanding, the service is average, and the other side dishes are average and desserts are average. And then there's a 1 that says the service is horrible at this restaurant, but the steak is the best thing I've ever eaten. And then there's a 5 that says the steak is the best thing I've ever eaten, the service is the best thing I've ever had, but it's incredibly expensive, and so on and so forth. Now, the interesting thing is, with all of you who are listening in, if I went one by one talking to you, asking you how you filtered each of these reviews, you would all filter them differently. You'd be looking for this, this, and this would have more weight than this, that, and that, right? But here's the deal. You're trusting the reviewer automatically, even though the only thing you may know about them is their email handle is like, rabbiddog@gmail.com, right? But you trust them. Why? Because you feel as if they have the same interests as you. That's a person like me. So in 2004, a person like me was the most trusted source, according to the Element Trust Barometer, of 23% of the people who responded. 2005, that went up to 51%. In the last 4 years, it's averaged 82%. And then they began saying, okay, well, given that, what is it that you are looking to trust, right? What is it that you're looking to trust? Well, they're looking to trust companies who are providing them with what they need in a way that suits their needs, that engages them, that says, okay, you're going to give me the products and the services, you give me the tools and we'll get into this in a minute, the consumable experiences. But they're also trusting that you'll get a communication, or you're also trusting that you'll get a communication that is actually significant and important to you in a timely fashion in the channels that you want them to communicate with you in. Now, that led to a period back in 2011, 12, right around there, 2010, 11, 12, where the strategy became multi-channel. That's what everyone's saying. What was multi-channel strategy? Well, multi-channel strategy was, well, okay, we need to figure out what's the strategy, what are the channels that someone communicates in, and which one is their favorite, and then we optimize to the favorite. Give me a break. Nobody actually communicates like that anymore. We don't think about the channels we communicate in. We just communicate. We think about the content of the communication. We think about the interaction in the communication, but we never think about the channel. We just naturally go to that. So that's actually changed the strategy to this, omnichannel, which means, and I'll explain what it means by a story. So about 3 years ago or so, almost 4 now, my niece, who was 18 at the time, was about getting ready to go to college, and we wanted to buy her something, so we figured we'd buy her a laptop because she wanted one. So she and I had talked about it a little bit, and then, I'm the geek in the family, so it was my job to help her figure that all out and get her the laptop. So one day I get a tweet that says, @PGreenby, I need your cell number. And that's from my niece. And it says, #LoveMyUncle, #MissYouGuys. She's like one of those kids who out of 140 characters, 130 a hashtag, and the other 10 are actual communication. So I give her back my cell number, and I said, I'll be around tomorrow. If I don't pick up, leave me a message. I promise I'll get back to you. Don't hear from her. So then I go on Facebook, because I know she's active on Facebook, and say, hey, you want to talk about the laptop? Then we can go get it next weekend. If you do, she writes, it sounds good. And then I said, and this is really, listen to this. I said, on Facebook, I said, did you get my cell on Twitter? I DM'd you with the number. So think about that. Facebook, cell, Twitter. There's 3 channels in that statement alone, including the one I'm actually on. And then I talked about DM. And then she says, catch this. Yeah, I got your number. I'll text you so you have mine. Now look to the left, and you see a text stream. And that text stream is basically us figuring out when we're going to communicate on Skype. So ultimately, we communicate on Skype, we go to the store, we buy the laptop, and we obviously meet in person. So in the space of about 36 hours, we communicated on 6 channels. Now, she's 18. She's a digital native. It's natural. It's organic to her. I'm so tired of hearing it's only natural and organic to them. I'm on Medicare. I'm 66, and it's natural and organic to me too, right? This is the way we all communicate now. We don't think about the channel. We just communicate. Now, that means that your strategy when it comes to the customer's experience, the way you engage them, the way you make them happy in general, is omnichannel, which means the optimal number of channels that you feel they might communicate on, not the optimal channel. Now, Aberdeen Group did some studies on best practices and companies that are best in class, and they found that the minimum number of channels that you have to be prepared to go with on this is about 7. I don't know which 7 in particular, but let's just call it 7. They actually found some outliers who had as many as 23 channels they communicated with. So this is the strategy you have to start considering, which is omnichannel. Then the next thing we have to get past when it comes to the customer experience is understanding behavior, right? How customers behave, not just how they communicate, but how they behave in the course of those communications, right? And we have to start or stop looking at this 1 through 5 scale that we use. Well, if you think about the 1 through 5 scale, what is that? 1 means, negative, 2 means somewhat negative, 3 is neither negative or positive, 4 is somewhat positive, 5 is very positive. All right, let's take a look at something for a minute. I used to do a lot of, we used to teach, one of the companies I was an owner of, we used to teach customer experience and how to actually, build out the work. And one of the things that I always noticed over time was that we have as individuals, we have a highly granular understanding of who we are and how we feel and what we like and what we don't like. So let me give you an example. Here you see this screen here, and it says, on the bottom you'll notice it says, in love, love, likes a lot, or like a lot, don't like, hate. All right, now I gave this, no exaggeration, as a blank screen and gave people literally 5 minutes to fill it out with something or someone they're in love with, someone or something they love, like a lot, so on and so forth. And you know what? When I say I gave this to thousands of people, I gave this to thousands of people. And you know how many will fail to fill it out in 5 minutes? None. Not a one. Everyone filled out every single thing. I'm going to show you mine just to give you an idea. This is my wife, Yvonne, of 35 years, who I am madly in love with still. This, of course, is my passion, and when it comes to sports, I love the Yankees. In fact, I actually consult with them somewhat. I like my book a lot, but I can't say I love it, right? It's a book, okay? And I wrote it, and I'm probably too used to it. And Starbucks. I mean, that actually leans toward don't like, actually, at this point. Don't like, this is the Hudson Hotel, which I will describe shortly. And hate, I'd love to put this to you. I put this to an audience one day at Adobe and asked them, what do you think? Who would be the hate given what you see on this screen? So I think you probably get the idea here. But the interesting thing is how granularly I understand that. Now, let me ask you this. If I'm giving you all this data, you have an enormous amount of data about me right now based on this, and you can actually make you can draw some conclusions and gain some insight into me by just seeing this. But if I just qualify as, let's say, in the course of something as 4.3 on a scale of 5, you're going to tell me the difference between 4.3 and 4.5? You know what the difference is? You get your bonus at 4.5, right? But that's it. You have no way of telling me what the actual difference is. There's no insight between 4.3 and 4.5. This isn't mathematical. This is emotional, right? And to understand customer experience, we have to understand the emotion and the behavior of customers. It's critical. And this is science now. This is no longer just guesswork. Now, here's an example of what we were talking about with reviews. Now look at this. How this is distinctive. The service at this 2-star Michelin restaurant was friendly though not warm. That's insight, right? That's insight right there. There's a difference between friendly and warm, and yet on a scale, you probably see that as 3.5 or to 3.8 or something like that. Maybe 3.8 to 4, who knows, but you get the point. We're not dealing anymore with stars, and we're not dealing anymore with numbers. We're dealing with emotions and behaviors that we have to anticipate and figure out. But here's where the problem comes in. When we're dealing with this digital customer, when we're dealing with the people who are making these decisions and doing these things, one of the things that we realize is that their interactions with us and the business and their experience with us isn't entirely driven and determined by us or them when their relation to us. There's everything else going on in their life that actually intersects their interactions with us and their experience and emotions with us. So I'll give you an idea what I mean. So let's imagine that we're all on Amazon, or I'm on Amazon, and I'm buying a book. In a normal day, nothing particularly dramatic happened in my life. So I go on to Amazon, buy the book, but there's some technology, a little bit of technical glitch. So there's a 6-second lag time, and in that 6 seconds, you know, after I hit the buy button, I'm sitting there. Well, it's a normal day, so I wait 6 seconds, buy goes through, done deal. Now, let's go back. Let's assume I had a major fight with my spouse, and it was teeth-gritting, irritating fight. I'm going on to Amazon to buy a book. Well, that 6-second lag, becomes 6-hour lag when I'm looking at it because I'm so irritated, I am so furious, and I abandon the cart in that case. Now, it's not Amazon's fault, although it is, right? But it's not Amazon's fault that I abandoned the cart. I abandoned the cart because I was irritated at my spouse and irritated by the results of that thing. On the other hand, I get these questions all the time from people, well, how do you find out what happened? And I said, you don't. You never will. I'm not going to tell Amazon that I had a fight with my spouse. Why would I do that? If they send a note saying, why'd you abandon your cart, I'm not going to say I had a fight with my spouse. You know what I'm going to say? Because it took 6 hours to get that buy button, even though it's 6 seconds. What they got to do is fix the lag, right? Fix that 6-second gap. That's what they got to do. On the other hand, my external behavior is impacting, but you have to settle in your mind, if you're going to understand the customer experience and how you treat it, that you're never going to know everything going on in the lives of your customers, and now you're not going to know everything, you're going to know very little. But what you will know is the interactions with you, right? And that will be important. So now let's start looking at what is customer experience so that we can clarify a few things. Bruce Temkin, who's one of the leading customer experience, both analysts and consultants and advisors in the United States, he runs the Temkin Group, is a former Forrester analyst, says customer experience is the perception the customers, excuse me, the perception that customers have of their interactions with an organization. Now, I want you to keep in mind the idea of perception, okay? And we're going to move to the next one. This is mine. How a customer feels about a company over time. And there's a lot of things that go into it. Customer engagement goes into it. Customer satisfaction goes into it. So, for example, my definition of customer engagement is the ongoing interactions between company and customer offered by the company, chosen by the customer. And it's sort of a chicken and egg thing. It's a yin-yang kind of interaction between how customers engage and the experience they've had and the experience they get and how it impacts the engagement, and the engagement they get and how it impacts the experience. I mean, all of that interplays with each. We're focusing right now on how a customer feels about a company over time. Now, note, Bruce Temkin said the word perception. I'm saying the word feels. None of that is 4-point anything on a scale, right? We're talking about the emotional state of a customer over time and ultimately how it leads to trust. Because when it boils down to it, they've got to trust you. And that means that if they have a particular bad interaction or experience is getting worse over time, if they trust you, they're going to allow you a little more leeway. If they don't trust you, it'll take 1 to 2 bad experiences and you're done. And those are numbers that come up in study after study after study and have come up the same damn number actually for the last decade and a half. It's been 1 or 2 will break you. Right? And if they don't trust you, or if they have very little trust for you. But if they fully trust you, they're a little more inclined to give you the leeway you need to repair the damage. Now, the problem is, though, when you're looking at experience, you have to look at the idea of value, too. Look, on the one hand, you're a business. Look, one of the things that always strikes me funny with Facebook and people complaining about Facebook is that it's not that their complaints are invalid. Facebook made a lot of mistakes and did a lot of things wrong in the very beginning and in the middle too. But there seems to be this assumption that Facebook is this actual neighborhood that's there for their benefit only, and it's not a business. It's a business. And what you're exchanging, your currency is your data, and you're giving them your data in order for you to use their service. Period. Now, The thing is, we have to look at the idea of value, though. And that's really how some of the impact goes in both directions and why Facebook made so many mistakes. On the one hand, we know businesses value what you would think. They value profitability. They value revenue. They increases. They value if they're let's call it a not-so-progressive organization, they value shareholder value. If they are a progressive organization, they value stakeholder value. In other words, they value sort of these relatively left-brain numbers, that are important to them and are important to their stock prices and other things. Customers value being valued, right, and feeling as if they are valued, right? And that is the mission-critical part of this. Now, what does that mean? Well, a lot of people think it means, discounts and some sort of loyalty benefits and things like that. And the answer is, yeah, that's the thing, but it's not feeling valued. It's the context around those things that makes the difference, and I'm going to prove it to you. Imagine it's, January 2017, and you get an email or whatever communications you're looking for. You get an email that says, hi, we love you. You are an amazingly valuable customer to us. We just think you are great. You've been such a loyal customer. Thank you so much. And for that, we're going to give you 20% off anything in our catalog. And you get that same email, January, February, March, April, May, and June. July 1, you don't. But you're still a really happy customer at that point. Now, I want you to remember the number I gave you, 20%, right? All right, so now let's say it's January 2017, and you get an email that says this. Hi, look, you're a putz. We don't like you. You annoy us. You bother us constantly. If you be quiet, we'll give you 30% off anything in the catalog. And you get this same email, January, February, March, April, May, and June. Now, if you're into S&M enough to keep you there through June and take that 30% every month, are you a customer July 1? Of course not. You're not a customer July 1 because that company doesn't like you, and is not valuing you, they're demeaning you. The whole idea is that you have to feel valued. The number itself is just a marker, right? But you have to feel valued by the company. That's what customers' value really is. Now, here's the thing. So what are the kind of things that help feeling valued? Right? Now, this comes out of a book called The Making of Meaning, How Successful Businesses Deliver Meaningful Customer Experiences, written in 2006. To be perfectly honest, other than this chart, I thought the book was terrible, but I love this chart. Right? So look at the things that are on here. I'm not going to go through all of them. Just take a look, for our purposes right now, at validation. A sense of being valued, individual, worthy of respect. But, you look around. Every one of these things actually goes to the heart of the kind of customer experience that you could potentially, the kind of things that lead to the kind of customer experience that makes you want to continue your relationship with the company. Another big one, especially now, is community, right, which is unity with others, common purpose, and that goes to a person like me that we were talking about when it comes to peer trust and that sort of thing, too. Or harmony, pleasing relationship of parts to whole, how the company's different parts interact with each other and with you, et cetera, et cetera. They seem a bit, maybe a bit esoteric and spiritual in terms of the way they're posed here, but the reality is this is literally the kind of things that go to the heart of great customer experience in a practical sense, too. And again, we're going to go through some companies that are doing this on a fairly large scale and how successful they've been. So the question then becomes, okay, if we're looking at that, we're looking to make a customer feel really great about us over time. And when I say really great, by the way, I don't mean constantly delighted. I mean the customer feels good enough about us to want to continue to be transacting with us. That's it, good enough. Because nobody in the world can delight the customer constantly without going utterly broke, right? Because delight has a very specific thing going with it. It means that it's not going to happen again, right? You're not expecting it again after it happens. So what does that mean? I'll give you an example. KLM Airlines is one of the most progressive airlines when it comes to they're thinking about community and they're thinking about delight, customer benefit, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things they did was a thing called KLM Surprise a few years back during the holiday season. What they did is they were monitoring a lot of their customers who were checking into specific flights on social media in real time. And they would then show up at the gate prior to boarding with a gift for that customer based on what they had seen on social media. So for example, there was one guy who was kind of lamenting the fact he wasn't going to see I guess it was a Dutch football club game that was really important to him. They went, because he had to go to New York, so they found a bar in New York, KLM did, found a bar in New York that was actually showing the game. And what they did is they went to the gate, and in that they brought him the Lonely Planet Guide to New York. The bar was in there, so it was circled, and in there was a $100 gift certificate to use at that bar, and so he could go watch the game. That's KLM Surprise. Now that's delight. But the important thing about it is not only did the customer feel, wow, this is amazing, although some of them were kind of creeped out that that happened, right? Those kind of things happen. But wow, this is amazing, but he didn't expect it again. If you expect delight again, it's not delight anymore, it's an expectation, and you have to exceed again and again and again and again, and you go broke. That's why you're looking to create an experience that's good enough and occasionally exceed it, not continually delightful, right? And then what are you trying to create? You're trying to create a company like me. What that means is you as a customer identify closely with that company. You feel as if you can trust them with the relationship you have with them, and that they're giving you enough of a choice in your interactions with them and are showing you that they value you. And so that's mutually beneficial. You feel valued, they get value that's to the values that they have, which, as I said, are more on the left brain side of the fence. And there's 4 pieces to that, and one of the big ones is the ordinary is kept ordinary. What that means is, look, most of the interactions that you have with a company are ordinary interactions, just plain old queries. Like, studies have been done, like dozens of them, in the typical range on service interactions, and they found that between 90 to 98, depending on whose studies you believe, 90 to 98% of the interactions are literally just queries. They're not complaints, they're just what's your address kind of queries. Now, the interesting thing is you can deliver that in any number of channels. Remember what we said when it came to Omnichannel. You can deliver a query answer via Twitter, via Facebook, via email, via phone, via in-person, via text, you name it. Ultimately, you have to make sure that you can do that, right? And that in the medium that the person is attempting to communicate, you communicate back in a timely way with an answer, period. And you don't let that get out of hand. So, like, for example, I once had a client many years ago who will remain nameless, a multi-billion-dollar company that didn't have a contact center and didn't have a number to call, so that when you went onto their website to look at how to contact them, there was nothing. And as a result of that, they blew up on social media, right? And of course, there was nowhere else to go, right? So, it damaged them for a while, although we fixed it. But the thing is that you have to keep the ordinary ordinary. That's a prime directive, because that's 90% of what you're going to be doing to begin with. And then you meet and exceed. You meet expectations always and exceed occasionally. And that's how the customer gets to feel good about you over time. And the other thing is you have to give the customer some control over their interactions with you. So not only are you providing products and services as if you would in the past, but you're providing tools, meaning giving them the ability to, say, go online and do things that they don't need to talk to things. That's why they talk to people with. That's why self-service is becoming such a popular option these days. And then you also need consumable experiences. Now, what I mean by that, they're not the same as the customer experience. These are a little different. What I mean by a consumable experience would be like American Girl, let's say. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but Mattel puts out this high-end doll called American Girl, which has been one of the most profitable divisions forever. And the interesting thing is each doll is built around a historical period with a story. There's lots of accessories like a bed or a buggy or a chair or whatever, or clothes that you can buy that are period pieces that, you know, are also, of course, additional costs. But most important, you can go to an American Girl store with your doll, and you and your daughter, and you can, your doll and your daughter and her doll can have lunch together. They can get their hair cut together. They can watch a play together, and you walk out $400 poorer. And the interesting thing is that I've asked a question of many a dad and mom who's done that. I said, how many of you have done it? And then afterwards, after we go through this, I say, how many of you wouldn't do it again? And one person raised their hand in the history of this. Because, of course, they're going to do it again, whether it costs $400 or not. Look, the doll doesn't have a clue that they're eating lunch or watching or getting their hair cut. It's a doll, right? But the daughter sure as hell knows, right? And the daughter is happy and smiling and laughing and feels great. That's a consumable experience. It costs you, but it's an experience. It's a thing your daughter will never forget. That's what we're talking about when we talk about that. These combinations are critical to customer experience. It's no longer just product and services. Now, the other problem, though, is that when you're starting to talk about consumable experiences, it doesn't mean just cool. Utility has to matter, too. So, for example, I'm going to take you past just in the interest of time. On the one hand, of course, as we said, how it makes you feel matters. But the other two are equally as important that you see here in the three components of experience. And this is Bruce Temkin's matrix for it, and I absolutely am a proponent of this. There are two other things that matter. Does it do what you want it to do, and how easy is it for you to do what you want it to do? It's not just how it makes you feel, which is where a lot of companies make the big mistake. They think that coolness is going to drive everything, and it just doesn't, right? It has to work, too. So what you see here is a picture of the Hudson Hotel. Now, this occurred back in 2009 or 10. Okay, it's during the recession. There was a very popular hotel kind of fad called retro European. And what it meant was you have hotels which would mimic European hotels in the United States that were designed and had beautiful high ceilings, and they had you know, great bars and so on and so forth, and would be reasonably priced. All right, so the Hudson Hotel in New York, I was there to give a speech to the Japan Society. The Hudson Hotel in New York was where they put me up, and I walked in, and this is literally the lobby. Okay, this very cool looking lobby, and what you don't, this is a Philip Stark design building, and he's like the leading minimalist designer probably maybe in the world. It's conceivable. His bar was one of the trendiest bars there. I had a friend over for a couple of drinks, literally like a total of 3 drinks, and if you take into account New York City tax and everything, it cost me $100 for 3 drinks, right? But the bar would look like it was made out of snow. I mean, it was all white, right? And it was very minimalist in design and very cool and very amazing, and the elevators were called lifts. Well, that's all cool, and I thought, whoa, this is amazing stuff. And then I got to my room, and this is literally my room. Now, here's the interesting thing about my room. You're seeing the bed kind of in the long view, although it's not, perspective isn't that good. You see that curtain there? That curtain is translucent. It's not opaque. And you see into the bathroom with it. Now, I was alone, so it didn't matter as much, but I want you to think if you were with somebody, even your own spouse, you're basically seeing whatever they're doing in the bathroom in a translucent way through that curtain. Now, the wall looks like it's got some distance. It doesn't. That thing, that side of the bed and the other side of the bed are right up against the closest piece of it, and that's that thing sticking slightly out from the TV there. On that side and on the other side, it's the wall. You can't drop a dime to the floor. There's no space. You turn right, you break your nose. You turn left, you break your nose, right? You couldn't move in this room. So what happened, right? What happened? It was horrible, right? It was a horrible experience, even though everything was cool as hell. But it wasn't well, actually cool as hell is probably a good description now I think of it. But it was a truly horrible experience. Why? Because the utility, the things you expect of any hotel room weren't there. Now, what you don't see is there's a desk to work on, but there's no chair. You see the edge of the bed? That's your chair. That's your chair. So the utility trumps the coolness here. It trumps the design. It trumps the trendiness. It trumps everything about it, right? It is by far the most important thing is you have to meet minimally the expectations for functionality and accessibility in order for making someone feel good about something that's cool and exciting, minimally. So when you're designing this thing, that's how you have to think. Here's my way of putting it. When the ordinary fails, the impact is greater on the experience than when the extraordinary and luxurious fails, because there's no expectation of possible failure of the ordinary. None. And that's what I mean when I said keeping the ordinary ordinary. No one expects, for example, to be unable to contact you in any way or to get an address from you. They expect to get it in whatever format they want it. And you cannot fail at those things. And that's what you have to, when you're designing an experience, you manage that first. Now, I'm going to give you a case study really quickly, because I know we're running a little short on time, of Dialog Axiata, which is actually a telco in Sri Lanka with almost 8 million customers, AAA rated, largest one, top valued brand in the entire country. I mean, just an amazing, amazing entity. They are focused on customer experience strategy. They look at service delivery from end to end, every single facet. They map the customer experience daily. Literally, I'll show you something. This is a part of their daily map. This is a daily map. Every single day, they're doing a customer experience map. Right now, what's the reasoning for that? Because some companies do it once every quarter at most. They do it every day. Why? Sandra DeZoiza, who's the Chief Customer Officer of Dialog Axiata, said, we need to do this because the industry is highly competitive. All of the competitors are willing to cut prices, and they're improving services daily. We need them, meaning themselves, to be exceptional, their services and what they provide. So every single one of their metrics are monitored, the feeling and behavior of the customers are monitored every day, and they're building out this as their initiatives. Voice of the Customer Forums, which is customer feedback. Five-star partners, the companies they partner with from a standpoint of building out an ecosystem of services that they know that their customers are going to want, so that the customer experience is not just exclusive to telco, but goes a lot further. So, for example, they noticed in the course of their research that they have a huge number of literally expecting moms on their network. So they developed a short code service, basically, text the short code, and they charge you, I don't know, 30 cents or whatever, a small amount. And it allows you to get an appointment with a doctor who will answer all the questions about your pregnancy that you want. Well, not, of course, if you need in person, you go to your own doctor. But they're available for immediate response. We'll answer any questions on your pregnancy. If you get like half hour with them, and they'll just take on whatever you got. So it's actually a medical service that they provide with qualified doctors to help you through via short code, simply because they found that their customers really needed to do this, right, and really wanted those kind of things. And then they make sure that it's very easy to do. It's basically you text the code, you're done. What comes back to you is a phone number and or a link, depending on how you did it, and you're there, right? And then they're monitoring how successfully or poorly every single piece of their company is working. So the other thing they do is that they make sure that they actually have account managers who are monitoring their accounts in the background, and they add value-added movie services based on real-time interaction. So they'll say, all right, we see that a lot of these customers are talking in social about movies, so let's give them a movie booking service. Food delivery, you name it. I mean, things like that. You can do all of these things via there. So it's an ecosystem. And what Sandra said, and she's an amazing person, this has more to do with bonding and relationships for the long term. It's not just a phone. It's not just revenue to us. Wherever you go, there's Dialog in your life making it easy for you. It's how well Dialog fits into Sri Lankans' lifestyles. This is service from the heart. Now, what that does, of course, over time is build out the kind of customer experience that you're looking for, which is how you actually make person feel great over time about you by doing all the things that on the ordinary side they're looking to get done, and from the extraordinary side, the things that surprise them the most and that they don't expect repetition of. Now, so what are the things you're looking at then? What does that mean? What are the lessons you can learn? Yeah, it's over time, but it's always moving and changing, and you have to be alert to that and constantly monitoring for those changes. The culture of the company has to support that kind of thing. It's not just customer-centric anymore. It's customer-engaged is the way you have to look at it. How do you build out engaged customers? You can have a customer-centric culture that satisfies customers but doesn't necessarily engage your customers, which is how you improve customer experience in the long run. Gallup just came out with a poll, which they found that in their database, 50% of the customers that responded were satisfied, and only 38 were engaged, and that the bar for engagement is much higher than the bar for satisfaction. So, for example, just to give you an idea of an attribute of one, let's say on the hospitality level, one of the satisfaction attributes would be like a wide array of in-room amenities, but an engagement attribute would be an active and energetic lobby, right? Things like that. In other words, there's a feeling of excitement, and which is much more engaging. So what does it mean then? So what are we talking about when we deliver it? So I'm going to give you one final example to close this out, which is the Philadelphia Flyers hockey team. Now, just to be clear, I'm a Rangers fan, okay? So I don't want any confusion on that. Remember, Yankees, but it also goes to Rangers, New York Giants, Knicks, you got it. Old school New York guy. All right. But the Flyers are astonishing at delivering a fantastic experience that has supported their constant both sellouts at Wells Fargo Center, or they may have to change the name, it looks like, or their season ticket holders who renew early year over year. And they have two strategies for this. One is called How You Doing, and the other one is Early Birds. How You Doing is very simple. It basically says that every single customer, every fan who comes through any door of anything we do has to be greeted, has to be engaged with, and every employee is empowered to answer any question that those customers ask, or those fans ask. So if you're walking in as a fan, first thing they're going to say to you, the employee, is shake your hand and say, how you doing? And they say, is there anything I can do for you? And if the person says yes, they are empowered to walk away with that person to go do it. Now, the fan is handed a card that says, how'd we do? 1 through 5 stars. Okay, and there's places throughout the entire stadium that you can drop off the cards, and they say, if you wouldn't mind, please do that. All right, but in the meantime, keep in mind, you're greeted, you're asked if there's anything you can do. Every single employee is given the option, is given the right to leave their station and go do whatever it is the fan asks. Now, that means, though, when you get that little card, right, you can be nominated by a fan, and you can basically be said, hey, you know, John was exceptionally outstanding today, Mary was amazing, etc. Now, here's the deal. Look, we're all self-interested human beings. There's no question about that, right? And because we're all self-interested, of course, you know, it's not just, oh, yeah, we just love our customers and we'll do everything we can for our customers, but we're also thinking we'd like to be valued and rewarded too. Well, what the Flyers do is that the employees who are nominated by fans who do stand out get serious prizes and bonuses, not $25, a pat on the head, you know, a ticket to the game that they probably could get tickets to anyway, but they get actually like vacations with their families. The number one might get, you know, $500 or $1,000 bonus. I mean, big rewards, right? Basically saying, look, this is really meaningful to us, and we want it to be meaningful to you, and we recognize we have to reward you too. Now, look at the numbers. 87% of all fans are greeted. But what's amazing is on 1 through 5, 5 out of 5, 97% of all the fans said they were highly satisfied, 97%. But now, here's the other side. The lifeblood of any team is their season ticket holders. And, you know, they're going to sell out. But what's really important is that they get cash in the bank early. So they've set up a program, which is Early Bird, which is early renewal. And what they did with this, and I'm going to run through this quickly, what they did with this is originally they tried some social media tricks to try to get the season ticket holders to get engaged this way, and they had some really cool videos on YouTube and online, and some interactive things you could do with phones and videos, and it was all great, and nothing happened. So instead of that, they looked at every season ticket holder and did an analysis of the season ticket holders from likelihood to renew, and they used a company called Turnkey to do that. They had 10 categories of criteria, the 5-star system, and then they literally analyzed every single season's ticket holder with a 1 through 5 likelihood, propensity to renew. And they had the profiles and the ratings. And then they built out 2 ways of delivering the experience. One is the 2 to 3, the 1 stars they just didn't do anything particular for. The 2 and 3 stars, though, they built what they call a spot event. And that meant while you were at the game, there would be a happy hour right after the game or right before the game, depending on when it was, at the Wells Fargo Center in the Hall of Fame room. Now, if you went into that Hall of Fame and looked around, you see all these plaques and pictures. And look, when it boils down to it, it's nostalgia, right? I mean, you know, that's why you're a fan. You've been a fan forever. You're a fan of the history and not just a fan of the current team. And they brought in the season ticket holders, or 2 to 3 stars, and they obviously knew where they sat because they knew every seat and everybody in it. And they gave them ice cream and more ice cream and beer and wine and snacks, right? And meaning comfort food. Food that made you feel really good. And I have this saying, you don't have to have luxury, you just have to feel luxurious, right? And that's what it did, man. You're in this room with all this history around you, and you're being pitched basically that not to just do it early, just renew early, not to just renew, but renew early. And you're getting all this stuff that's comfort food. Your odds are pretty good you're going to renew, all right? And I want you to keep that in your mind. Now, the 4 and 5 stars got this. This is a postcard, literally. Now, what's in the postcard? Look at it. There's one on there I'm just going to point out. On the left, it's the prizes and experiences. Right on the right, it's grand prize drawings. They're one-of-a-kind things. So the one-of-a-kind things would be like dinner with a member of the Broad Street Bullies, who are like some of the greatest and most toughest of Philadelphia's championship teams, and they have their own pub, and you'd have dinner with them. That's the one-offs. But the interesting one is that there are 2 things here. One is you had the ability to go to, you said, come to the barbecue, but the other one, look in the dead center, it says high fives. This says that if you renewed early, and you had children who were between 6 and 14 years old, they can high-five the players as they come onto the ice for a game. I mean, I want to do that. And I'm 66, and I'm a Rangers fan. I want to do that, right? I mean, that's amazing. And just imagine what it means for your kids at that age. And what they're not saying, give us more money. They're just saying renew early, right? So what are the numbers, right? Well, they said, all right, well, here's what drives it first. History and tradition, fan bonding, pure entertainment, and the authenticity, meaning how real is the feeling that they value you. That's what they mean by authenticity here. That they're not trying to just sell you, that they actually do care that you do well with the team. What are the results? Well, look, even the 1 star, 83.7 over a 3-year period, 83.7 of all the 1 stars renewed early. 87.5 2, 83.3, and look at these numbers. 89.1 and 92% early renewals over 3 years, and each year 1,000 more renewed early than the last year. Raging success because the experience was dramatically great. So what were the things you had to do? Well, you develop the strategy, you define what you have to do, and then you do it. And you know, these slides, if you like, I'll make them available to Bpm'online, and you can have them. That's why there's more material in it than I'll actually cover, but you have to go through Bpm'online to get them. So what are we looking at then? Finally, how do you drive an experience? How do you drive a great customer experience? It's what we said. Keep the ordinary ordinary. Exceed occasionally. Make sure that your interactions, regardless of whatever channels they're communicating on, are consistent, and make sure you have the channels available for them to communicate. And make also sure that what the customer is looking for, you're providing at the level you're able to provide. And that's the way you do this. What is the outcome? Well, the old outcome when it came for like CRM and the other things was the 360-degree view of the customer. That was the holy grail. Now it's a prerequisite. Okay, that's just a prerequisite. The new outcome is if you build the customer experience correctly, then what you're going to have is a customer who says, this is a company like me. So that's what you're aiming at here. A company like me is your mantra, right? And if you can build from that and build out in some of the ways I explained and use some of these great examples, you'll be successful, I hope. So thank you very much, and back to you now, Michael.
Great, Paul. Thanks very much. It's certainly an unbelievable amount of information put into that presentation. So just a couple observations that I had. You know, in the very beginning, you were talking about, you know, artificial intelligence being, you know, metrics driven and kind of, you know, structured, if you will, and the experience is really more emotional. And so I wonder if, as we're all striving for, you know, intelligent processes and whatnot, is it really emotional processes that we're going to need to work with? I'm sorry, I'm just transitioning here.
Okay. Do you want me to respond to that while you're transitioning?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the answer is yes and no. I mean, the traditional processes that we do deal with, the, you know, BPM kind of processes, the business process stuff, it still hold. There's no question about it. They will still hold, right? And that's where the ordinary being ordinary is. A lot of what the ordinary is automated, right? It's just stuff that, like, you know, if I send in a request for an address, that's can be automatic. You know, if I'm looking at things via self-service, that's can be pretty automatic. If I'm looking at getting some data or getting some content, a lot of that can be automated. I mean, in other words, there's a lot of things you can do automatically that don't need a direct human touch. The thing is, I think, though, that you do have to understand emotions and behavior, and that, you know, from that standpoint, there will be a lot more emotional, let's say, emotional knowledge that needs to be gathered and insights gained, and artificial intelligence's value in specific would be to help you actually manage that and continue to automate it at an even higher level.
Great, appreciate that. So I guess my job really is to kind of pull some of Paul's observations and the presentation kind of back to what Bpm'online brings to the table, which is, you know, CRM. And certainly with everything we've gone through, CRM is not the solution to all of the customer experience, but I think we might agree that it's somewhat the core. You know, I should point out actually that I'm a Bruins, Red Sox, Patriots fan, and yet Paul and I would say, are good friends. So I think that just goes to show that we can all get along, right? So just a little snapshot of information here with regards to customer experience. The Genesis Group did an analysis of, you know, why businesses are investing in customer experience, and here are the top three. You know, customer retention, customer satisfaction, cross-sell, upsell. You know, I would argue that we invest in marketing and customer experience and all that really to retain, maintain, and gain revenue. I mean, in the bottom line, that's what all companies are looking to do. So how can CRM help boost that CX? Like I said, I think we can look at CRM as the core of the customer experience, and you know, integrated with seamlessly some of the outward-facing experiences. Certainly some of the things with the flyers were people in the streets, people in the halls, people greeting, had nothing to do really with technology, right? But here's another little statistic that I like to put in here. 47% of CRM users believe customer satisfaction is significantly impacted. Now, as Paul pointed out, customer satisfaction is really just a component of the overall customer experience, but people do put faith in their CRM system actually adding to that customer satisfaction. Put it this way, a bad CRM system is certainly going to detract from that level of customer satisfaction. So a quick poll here, and I'm actually not going to spend too much time on it, but we'd like this information. Do you believe your current CRM has all the required capabilities to efficiently manage your customer experience? Yes, to some extent. I don't think so, and no. And maybe at the end we can go forward with the answers to that. So if you participate in the poll, I'd appreciate it. So this is kind of dovetailing with what Paul had to talk about, and kind of one of the manifestations we've all seen about the digital transformation is the number of channels that our customers and prospects communicate with us. And so this is really just a one customer journey, might be consistent with all of us. This person might have been looking for a laptop, a new cell phone, whatever it might be. She looks on Facebook and sees some information. She goes to Google. I'm sorry, and you're seeing the poll right now, so you're not seeing my screen. And there we go. So this is just a representative. I'm sorry, people are the poll is bouncing in and out, but I think the core of folks are comfortable, or to some extent think their CRM has the capabilities. And my question might be, are you actually leveraging all those capabilities to get the full amount toward the customer experience? Now back to my slides. And so, Paul talked about the requirement, the ordinary, if you will, is that you need to be able to communicate on all these different channels. And we would certainly agree with that. And so that bridges across, what, old school would say the customer journey or the customer experience across marketing, sales, and service. And those paths can be very different. But again, the ordinary, the expectation of the customer is that regardless of the path that they take, needs to be captured and responded to consistently. And so what Bpm'online brings to the table, our platform, is consistent interconnected processes that can grab those touch points regardless of the omnichannel, digital, or social positioning that they are, pull them into consistent intelligent, predictive, and integrated processes to give a consistent experience back. Also, having that entire journey consist on one platform, people think is important. So 42% of service agents feel that they're unable to resolve customers' responses in a single sitting, if you will, because they have to jump onto disconnected systems. Or forget, a live agent. More and more we're going to see bots out there that are or we do see chat bots out there responding to needs. They need to have access consistently across all the different functions to be able to answer all the questions as quickly as possible. And so again, Bpm'online offers a platform that covers marketing, sales, and service, all backed by a business process management engine that adds intelligent processes, intelligent capabilities to that overall customer experience. And of course, the large majority of customers are frustrated because anytime that they have to, repeat issues multiple times to representatives. So by having all those components connected on a single platform across a single process eliminates some of that. Talked about Omnichannel. This is a really strong statistic, I'd say, from the Aberdeen Group. It says companies with the strongest omnichannel customer engagement retain an average of 89% of their customers, as compared to only a third, 33% of the companies that have weak omnichannel strategies. Now, I'm not quite sure how they segmented or identified a strong strategy versus a weak one, whether that was purely the number of channels that they're able to communicate with, or whether they captured favored channel or anything like that. But certainly a strong component. This is actually a screenshot of the action dashboard within Bpm'online, and you'll notice that right from that dashboard, the agent or the sales rep or whatever role is viewing it or using it is able to communicate across all those different channels. And so that was putting our positioning on the foundation, the core of customer experience, and what we're confident we bring to the table is not just the ability to put in place static business processes, but also to give our customers the agility. And I think Paul also talked about the need to observe and change to make sure you're moving from customer-centric to customer-engaged, giving the agility to change those processes as quickly as the market requires. And then, of course, being able to align marketing, sales, and service across a single platform, so to the end user, to the customer, for their experience, it's truly seamless. So one final poll here, and then maybe we can fit in a few other questions, though we're bumping up on time. The webinar is not going to stop automatically, so we can continue, and hopefully some of you can stay with us, and Paul, you can give us some more insight on some of these questions. So this is, did we manage to inspire you? I should say, did Paul manage to inspire you? Because I think he certainly inspired us. Yes, it was inspiring and useful. I liked the webinar. It was average, or hopefully nobody hits a 4. Life is too brutal and you can't inspire me. I would hope things outside of this webinar are inspiring to you. So, Paul, if you have a little bit of time for a couple questions.
Sure.
So this one comes from outside here. Could CRM evolve to a CEM?
I can't hear you. Can you come over?
Sorry, I got to talk to the screen. The question is, can a CRM system or practice evolve to a CEM, customer experience management system, and what is needed for that? So maybe what would you say, Paul, needs to be added to kind of the run-of-the-mill CRM to be able to call it a CEM?
Well, okay, so this is kind of a tricky question for a lot of reasons. Number one is, even though there are systems that claim to be customer experience management technology, there's no actual such thing. There's no such thing. And the reason I say that is you can't, look, technology systems enable things. That's what they do. You can't enable how people feel. That's impossible. Now, there are systems of engagement, and we know CRM is a system of record, and so there are engagement systems, which CRM becomes a part of, right, that are much larger because they involve more pieces. Now, that said, what you can do to, let's say, expand a CRM system to something a little broader that involves knowledge and understanding, gaining some insight on the emotional behavior and anticipatory behavior through analytics, really. I mean, there's a lot of analytics out there right now that are focused around customer analytics in particular that that will give you the insights you need to identify how a customer is going to feel about you over time. And they're looking at things like sentiment analysis that, and remember what I said, human beings have a very granular understanding of their own behavior and their own feelings, and where we tend to change things to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 system. There are a number of technologies now beginning to evolve, well, more than beginning to evolve, they've evolved, that are like, could be 10 or 11 point systems, meaning they actually identify the difference between warm and friendly, right, things like that. Those kind of systems, that in combination with a lot of the, let's say, the more practical aspects of artificial intelligence will give you the capability to develop the insights to expand a traditional CRM system to something broader. And when I say traditional, at this point, I'm also including what we used to call social CRM. So, from that standpoint, so on the one hand, so just to reiterate quickly, there's no such thing as a customer experience management technology system because you can't enable feelings. Number two is there are, and you've never heard of a system of experience, have you? Right? There are such things as systems of record, which is CRM, and systems of engagement, which are customer engagement system technologies that, in combination or CRM expanded with analytics, that can actually evolve you to the point where you do understand things and can actually use some of the more predictive analytics to anticipate customer behavior, or you can do some of the other add-ons that are out there that will allow you to figure out what your next best or your best next step is in your sales, marketing, or service initiatives based on the historical data you have on your customers. So you can expand those ways, but you can't expand to something that doesn't exist regardless of the hype. Let's just say that. Oh no, there was somebody who's existentially hurting. There's one person existentially hurting. So
I don't know if they should call us or call some other helpline, but the majority of people seem to have liked.
I'm sorry. I'm available for counseling. So that's actually really, that's why I say it's a tricky question. The answer is yes, but there's no such thing as a customer experience management technology system.
Right. A couple other, I guess, kind of basic questions, which maybe tells you where people are at with customer experience. But, you know, in your experience or from your point of view, you know, is there a pecking order to how you go about rolling out your customer experience? So would you look at biggest bang for the buck or building in, you know, the foundation towards a better experience, if that makes sense?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, here's the thing. Remember we were discussing earlier the idea that both of us actually talked through the idea of things are always evolving and changing. And so, you know, I'll say pecking orders don't really work in that regard, but what does work is this. Look, ultimately, we're talking about how a customer interacts with us and how they feel about us given those interactions and how we've responded to those interactions. Consequently, when we're talking, because we're talking about that, we're also saying that this customer, customer A, has had a very, you know, high-value relationship with us over time, where customer B hasn't. But our historic way of looking at it has always been through things like customer lifetime value, which is really a metric for transactions, right, and revenue value based on transactions of a customer and his immediate family. But things are beginning to evolve a great deal, and we're now looking at engagement value, which is a much bigger metric, which includes customer lifetime value as one aspect, but it also includes the indirect impact on financial value, such as referral value, which would be through a loyalty program, you refer someone and they become a customer, or influence value, which is via social, you know, somebody listens to your recommendation and becomes a customer, or brand I'm sorry, knowledge value, or the customer makes a suggestion for a product which you implement, and that provides it, makes it a much bigger seller, right? All of these different pieces are now being put together. The father of this is a guy named Dr. V. Kumar, is an academician out of Georgia State who runs their marketing program, and also is one of the world's leading experts in this field. There's a very good book on it that I highly recommend. I mean, I'm writing a book on customer engagement, for example, for Harvard Business Press, and in the metrics part, I'm not bothering with trying to figure out my own. I'm just following him and saying, this is the guy who knows what he's doing. So, but that's what I'm saying. So, you know, this allows for the fluidity of change and also the nature of a 21st century customer, so that when it comes to experience, you know how to concentrate your firepower, how to use your limited resources, the approaches you have to take, the investment you have to make, the time you have to spend, the labor you have to put on the case, you know, things like that. And that's how this works now. The fluidity, it really eliminates traditional pecking orders, because the pecking order was originally based on the customer side, was always based on lifetime value, and for the customer, the pecking order was based on the companies that made them feel best over time, that they could trust. So that's never changed, and that part is how the company has to work. What you're always doing with all of this is acquiring, maintaining, you're acquiring and maintaining the trust of this customer.
Right, right. So I do realize we're over time. Maybe one last question.
Sure.
I'm not sure if it's really related to what goes first, but in your experience, what's the best practice for who owns this overall process? You know, I've seen chief experience officers come up now. I've seen marketing own this. I've seen sales own this. I've seen services own this. And, you know, I think I was just reading the other day, it's not about executive sponsorship, it's about executive ownership to make a project actually successful. In your experience, is there a best practice for, you know, who drives the overall customer experience?
Well, the answer is no. But there's a yes, but there's a no. The no is it's not a title. The yes is it's the person with the power to make changes, to apply resources, who is also the evangelist for the idea. So, for example, a lot of the typical projects that you see when it comes to experience or engagement. Let's say the more advanced, or even historic CRM, started at lower levels. And for the overall, I've done this 20-something years now, and over the years, I've always been asked by some of the people who are the evangelists at the lower level, how do we get management buy-in? And my answer has always been the same. I always say, do you have a champion, someone who really likes this project, who's a C-level exec or an SVP or an EVP or something like that, or GM? And typically the answer is, yeah, there's this person. That's your owner. That's who has to become the owner. There's a lot of politics in this stuff, right? I mean, now, if you're doing it by title, the typical owner will be the CMO, as you said, the Chief Service Officer, the Chief Customer Officer, of course, now, which is a legitimate, has a legitimate place in companies, is another one that's a great owner. Like, if you remember my Dialog Axiata example, the owner was Sandra DeZoizo, who was the Chief Customer Officer. But the owner at another company I know is the Chief Marketing Officer, and the owner at one of the original companies I dealt with was the Chief Financial Officer, right? So, I mean, what you had was the person who was most evangelical, who supported the lower level, being able to take ownership, partially due to the passivity of everybody else on it, because generally it's not like you're finding at this day and age, you're not finding enormous opposition to it, you're finding inertia, right? So, and the way you break inertia is the people who are evangelical about it inside the company are the ones who grab the ownership. The other people are inert. They're not going to stop you. They're simply going to not do anything, right? They're not the ones who are going to lead. They're the ones who will follow if you then go ahead and prove your business case once you do that. But it's always the evangelical person with power at the company. It's not the title.
Right. That certainly makes sense. So I think that brings us not to our time, but over our time. Certainly, Paul, it's always a pleasure working with you. We really appreciate your time and your insight. And thank you to the folks. Quite a few of you did stay on over time, and pretty much everybody did stay through the time. So I would call this a successful best practice webinar, and have a great day. Thanks, Paul.
Totally my pleasure. You guys are awesome.